Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Sunday, August 11th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far today. We've got a New York Jets win to recap today on the podcast. This is episode 349 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you as always, for joining me. For those of you tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. I appreciate all of your support as always. Apologies for not getting this video out yesterday. Was traveling back. Now I am back in my studio, and I will have daily content out once again starting up this week with training camp tomorrow. Back in the swing of things. So apologize for no video yesterday, but we got our recap today. We'll break down everything from this New York Jets 20-17 win. Even though it's preseason, it's still nice to get a win. It's still nice to get into the win column, even though in the grand scheme of things, it means absolutely nothing from a standings or a win perspective. Now, before we break down yesterday's game, I should say, and break down all of my biggest takeaways and all that good stuff, let me tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek is an app that delivers tickets from all over the internet and puts it into one spot for you to make it easier for the buyer. What makes SeatGeek so great is they rate each ticket on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know what type of deal you are getting. You know where the good deals are at. Green circle means good. Yellow circle means okay. You could do better. Red circle means stay away. So you want to look for those green circles, those green dots, because those are where the good deals are at, and you are paying the right price for your ticket. Plus, my viewers, use promo code Bubs on Sports for $20 off your purchase. Click the SeatGeek link in the description down below. That'll take you to download the SeatGeek app. And at checkout, use promo code Bubs on Sports for $20 off your purchase. Get yourself out to some of these preseason games. The Jets still got to play the Giants at MetLife. They'll be away next week. If you're in Carolina, though, get yourself some tickets for that. Great, cheap seats for preseason games. SeatGeek's got them all. Promo code Bubs on Sports for $20 off your purchase. And any sporting event, any event in general. If you can buy a ticket for an event, not just sports, use SeatGeek. Also, my friends over at Huga House. If you want to get the hat that I wear all the time on the podcast, or any of the hats that Aaron Rodgers wears all the time, even Shane Gillis, Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Conklin, so many people wear Huga House vintage-inspired hats, myself included. Use promo code BUBS for 15% off your purchase at Huga House. Click the link in the description down below. That'll take you to the store, and at checkout, promo code BUBS to get yourself some of the same swag QB1 is rocking all the time, Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers did not play yesterday. It was mainly the backups. 28 New York Jets were inactive yesterday afternoon at MetLife Stadium. So it was primarily just backups. Even some of the New York Jets higher end backups like Jamie Sherwood, who was a guy I thought we might see and I would have liked to see, but even a guy like Jamie Sherwood didn't play. Ashton Davis, another one of those higher end backups, didn't play. So it was really primarily a lot of younger guys that played. Will McDonald did play, so I guess if you want to consider him a starter / higher end backup, he was out there. But primarily it was your young guys, your rookies, your Malachi Corleys, your Braylon Allens who impressed. Of course, you had basically two camp arms at quarterback other than Tyrod Taylor. So primarily what you would expect from a first preseason games in terms of who played. There really wasn't any surprises as a starter playing or not. I mean, Tippmann did play, so he did start and stuff like that. So there was a couple starters sprinkled in here, but it wasn't the Garrett Wilson. There was no Breece Halls. All that was obviously to be expected. Now we'll kind of break down just some of my instant takeaways. We'll start on offense, and then we'll move over to the defensive side of the football, because I thought there was a lot of really, really positive takeaways from a couple of these New York Jets rookies on offense. And we've got to start with Braylon Allen. I mean, what a day it was for him. Obviously, the rookie out of Wisconsin has really, really shined during training camp so far, has looked really, really good. And he's not really competing for the number 2 spot, but if there was any doubt that Isaiah Davis or somebody else could take over the number 2 running spot. If there was any doubt, that doubt has completely got to be taken away, because yesterday Braylon Allen completely secured himself as a legitimate number 2 running back, the perfect complement behind Breece Hall once week 1 against the Niners rolls around. 6 carries yesterday for 54 yards, 9 yards per carry, 24 yards was his longest run of the day. His ability to break tackles, his ability to just lower his shoulder and truck guys was on full display. His speed getting to the second level was on full display. This guy is going to be a nightmare for defenses, and it's going to be a nightmare 1-2 punch. He even showed you some in the passing game as well, where this is a guy that even during camp, primarily during camp, a guy that has been able to be utilized a lot in the passing game as a receiver, has shown that kind of under the radar trait that he didn't really show you a lot at Wisconsin, has shown you that so far this summer with the Jets. But yesterday, that downhill physical running style is on full display. And I was really looking forward to seeing him out there, because training camp's kind of tough to evaluate running backs, especially a running back of Braylon Allen's caliber, where he is your downhill truck guys, break tackle runner, because you really can't tell if they're breaking tackles, if they're knocking guys over, because they don't wrap up, they don't fully tackle, they don't fully bring you down. They usually call the play dead. So it's tough to tell, but in-game action, you could really see that. And I think that's a huge positive if you're a New York Jets fan. Even Isaiah Davis, I thought, did some good things. I know the box score isn't extremely impressive from a running perspective, but he did have a nice 6-yard run, 4 carries, 8 yards overall, but really showed you, I think, a lot in the passing game, which was really positive. 4 receptions for 33 yards. That was this Jets' second highest receiver yesterday afternoon, 8.3 yards per reception. 24 was his longest of the day on 4 targets. So caught all the targets that he was, caught all the balls that were thrown his way. I thought Isaiah Davis showed you a lot. I just think those 2 running back picks showed you a lot. And that's kind of been a common theme. I think they've both been positives. I think Braylon Allen's been the biggest positive during camp from those two players, because obviously, you know, he's the higher draft pick. He's the number 2 running back. But I think even Isaiah Davis has shown you a good amount, especially in some of the red zone stuff that they've done during camp. So good to see both those running back draft picks really kind of stand out, do some good things. Braylon Allen really standing out. Isaiah Davis also doing some good things as well. Some of the other young guys that I thought stood out, and then we'll get to some other things as well. Malachi Corley, another rookie. I thought Malachi Corley had a nice day yesterday. And again, this is what you want in the preseason. I thought yesterday was a very productive, a very successful day for the New York Jets. Not that they won, but it's more so that you saw a lot of really, really, really good signs out of your young players in their first live game action. And I think that's a really big positive. Corley yesterday, 4 receptions, 27 yards, 5 targets, 14 was his longest, 14 yards was his longest reception of the day, 6.8 yards per reception. Nothing crazy. I know he kind of the punt and stuff. I know he looked a little shaky on special teams, but I thought all in all, he was solid from a receiving standpoint. This was a guy that kind of early on in camp didn't do a whole lot. Recently has come on with the Xavier Gipson injury, of course, that he was dealing with. He has really kind of come on now. He's gotten some first team reps. He's worked with Rodgers. He's made some really, really nice plays during camp. I thought yesterday he looked solid. I thought you saw that yak ability. You saw that physical ability. You'll see more of it here as camp goes on, or as preseason games goes on, and camp as well. But he's another guy that I think you could see the potential. You could see the growth. You could see why there is so much excitement around him in game action, because similar to a Braylon Allen, he's a guy that it's tough to gauge what he's doing in training camp, because his play style doesn't really match up well with camp, where they're not tackling. You really can't tell if he's breaking tackles. You really can't tell if he's running over guys, if he's picking up an immense amount of yards after catch, because a lot of times they call the play dead. So this is a guy that these preseason games are really helpful to evaluate where he's actually at, where it's in a full in-game environment and you could actually see all of his traits in full swing. I thought box score wise, wasn't the most impressive, but I thought he showed you some good things on those 4 catches that he had, and you saw the talent there. Now it's just continuing to build kind of building blocks in a way, only getting better from here on out over these next 2 preseason games. And of course, the rest of camp here as we close out August here in a couple weeks. Those are the main rookies on offense that I thought you should be impressed with from a skill position standpoint. As for the defense or the offensive line, I thought Olu Fashanu, I know he had the penalty early on. He had the false start. I think a lot of that was jitters. First game out there. I know it's only preseason, but your first NFL game starting at left tackle, it's a big deal. Whether you're preseason or not, it's a big deal. Had the false start, but I thought after that he bounced back well. It kind of looked like the false start, he was adjusting his stance a little bit. But look, in the NFL, they're going to call it, maybe you could get away with that in college. You're not going to get away with that in the NFL. So just something that he'll learn, something that he'll grow from. I actually thought Olu yesterday looked pretty good as a run blocker, and that's not knocking his pass game, but more so his run blocking I thought was impressive yesterday. A couple of those runs that were broken out yesterday that the Jets had success running. The Jets had a lot of success yesterday running the football. I mean, they ran for 118 yards, albeit I know primarily backups other than, Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, obviously, Deion Jackson and Xavier Ballard and Izzy. Those are more roster bubble guys, although Izzy did have a touchdown. We'll get to that here soon. But, 118 yards, 29 carries. Yes, against a lot of Washington second-team defense. It's still rushing for over 100 yards. So I thought the run game as a whole looked good yesterday, and Olu Fashion definitely had a hand in that. I thought he looked good as a run blocker. I thought he looked really good. And not that that's surprising, but coming out of college, he was primarily just a pass protection specialist. He was the best pass blocker. When you looked at him and Joe Alt, when you compared the two, Joe Alt was the better all-around left tackle, while Fashanu was the best pass blocker, but his run blocking is not as strong as Alt's. That's kind of what separated the two. Do you take the more well-rounded pass? Did you take the more well-rounded offensive lineman in Joe Alt? And they obviously the Chargers did. And in Fashanu was there for the Jets, kind of a pass protection specialist. So I thought it was a really positive sign to see in his first game that he was opening up some running lanes and having success from a run blocking perspective. Joe Tippmann as well. Snaps look good. I think he only had 3 shotgun snaps. I think he only had 6. I think it was 3 shotgun snaps, I believe. Nothing crazy, but you didn't see any glaring mistakes. So very small sample size, but he's getting better. Ever since about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, when maybe even less than that. I'm terrible with time. I'm terrible with gauging when things happen. But about 2.5 weeks ago or whenever it was, when he had that day where he had half a dozen snaps over Aaron Rodgers' head, literally like 6-7 snaps that went all over the place. It seems like he's gotten better each day. They've gone down. The last couple of practices, there really hasn't been any glaring issues. Even in the rain, there weren't many glaring issues from a snapping perspective, which was a positive. Yesterday, there weren't any glaring issues. So it seems like this is something that is starting to get resolved. Maybe not officially resolved yet, but things that you've seen now, probably a good week and a half now, where he has had a couple get loose on him, but not to the extent of where they were early in camp, where it felt like every single practice there was 2 or 3 that were all over the place. So Tippmann seems to be recovering from what was a rough start. And that's why, again, you got to send a message to fans that were panicking in July that Joe Tippmann was having snapping problems. You got to give him, he had an entire month to figure it out. He hasn't fully figured it out, but, you would still like to see more. But I think overall, you've got to be happy with the progress that you've seen him make since some of the struggles early on. So those are the main guys that I wanted to get to on offense. From a quarterback perspective, Tyrod didn't do a whole lot, 1-2 drives. That was about it. Then it was the Andrew Peasley and Adrian Martinez game. Andrew Peasley and Adrian Martinez were phenomenal yesterday. I mean, they were great. They were excellent. We'll start with Adrian Martinez. I mean, 6 of 10 for 104 yards, 10.4 yards per completion. Didn't throw a touchdown. Didn't have any picks. Had a passer rating of 95.4. If it was probably had more time on the clock, he probably could have thrown a touchdown, but the Jets settled for the field goal late in that game. Andrew Peasley, 8 of 11, 73 yards, 6.6 yards per completion, 1 touchdown, no picks, passer rating 120.6. Andrew Peasley looked great. Andrew Peasley and Adrian Martinez, I mean, phenomenal day yesterday. So good for those two guys. Obviously, Adrian Martinez, the UFL MVP, Andrew Peasley, the UDFA out of Wyoming that they've brought in. Good to see those two guys, 2 camp arms. Look, maybe one of them catches on to the practice squad. I don't think so. In terms of maybe one of them does, one of them will probably will definitely, both of them will, one of them might get called onto the practice squad. The other they'll probably get rid of and maybe we'll go sign elsewhere. But it's good for these two guys to put good film on tape. We talked about Andrew Peasley being the summer of Peasley. He looked good yesterday, but Adrian Martinez, I think, in a way, even stole the show. Some of the throws that he was making were phenomenal. They were just throws that you never saw. The one throw to Brandon Smith, 37 yards downfield, was phenomenal. I mean, Andrew Peasley and Adrian Martinez, call me crazy, but it's just because we're starving to have football back. I'm going to overreact here for a second. If we had Andrew Peasley or Adrian Martinez on the Jets last year, this team's a playoff team. And I'm overreacting. It's probably not true, but those throws were never made. Like they even ran the offense more competent than Zach did. Just sitting there watching the game yesterday, and you see the throws that they were making, and you're like, we haven't gotten this in years. Like literally, Andrew Peasley and Adrian Martinez throws. Those two quarterbacks look like the greatest thing since sliced bread compared to what we've been working with. So, in all seriousness, no, good days for those two guys. To Adrian Martinez, of course, the UFL MVP, getting an opportunity here in camp with the Jets. Peasley as well from Wyoming, getting an opportunity here, camp with the Jets. Good to see both those guys in live game action. Put good tape on for not only the Jets, but of course the rest of the NFL as well, if they do maybe get picked up elsewhere when all is said and done here. Always good to see some of these underdog guys do pretty well here in the preseason. Jason Brownlee, 1 catch, 12 yards, touchdown. Beat Emmanuel Forbes. Emmanuel Forbes, I mean, I'm surprised Washington let him on the plane back home to Washington DC, whatever. I'm surprised because this is a guy that I think they play in Maryland. I don't even know. Whatever. I'm surprised they let him on the plane back home. Emmanuel Forbes had a terrible, terrible week here in Jersey. You start with Thursday, the joint practice, right? And Garrett Wilson was cooking him. And you're like, okay, it's Garrett Wilson, legitimate number one receiver, a star in the making with actual competent quarterback play. Rodgers wasn't even playing, but Tyrod's the best quarterback that, even with Rodgers not playing, Tyrod is still an upgrade over anything that the Jets have had over the last 2 seasons. And they were absolutely dicing up Emmanuel Forbes. And you could sort of understand because it is Garrett Wilson and it's, a guy that probably at the end of this year will implement himself as a top 7, maybe even top 5 receiver in the NFL. And okay, fine. Garrett Wilson dices you up. Then you go to yesterday and Jason Brownlee and Andrew Peasley connect on you. A perfect throw by Andrew Peasley. And then Brownlee with about, I'd say, 3-4 yards of separation gets by Forbes to the corner of the end zone, makes a great catch. I mean, you let Jason Brownlee, nothing against Jason Brownlee, but it's one thing to be getting cooked by Garrett Wilson. It's another thing to get beat by Andrew Peasley throwing to the Jets' probably 6th receiver and Jason Brownlee. And you're essentially their number one corner. So not a very good week at all for Emmanuel Forbes. I have nothing against the guy, but I'm just saying that is not a very good week. I'm not bashing him because I don't like him. I genuinely don't care. I'm just saying not a good week for him at all in Jersey. And he's going to have to get some of those things corrected before the season begins because he was getting diced up all over the place this week. It was not a good week. But for Jason Brownlee, really nice throw, really nice catch, really good route, corner of the end zone. Just a beautiful play all around. I mean, for a 3rd-string quarterback, really your 4th string, actually, once Jordan Travis is healthy, really your 4th-string quarterback connecting to essentially probably your 6th receiver. It was a beautiful play. And Brownlee, after starting slow in camp, has really, really looked good here over the last couple weeks. The first, I'd say 4 or 5 days of camp early on, you won't even, I don't even think I said his name once. Like, you wouldn't even hear about him. Just wasn't doing a whole lot, wasn't really flashing in 7-on-7s and regular team drills, just wasn't doing a ton. And then all of a sudden he piled up a couple good practices in a row, got a couple first team reps. And now he looks like, I think he's running away now, especially with that touchdown yesterday. He's running away with that 6th receiver spot. I mean, I know, of course, you've got Irv Charles there. You've got Malik Taylor, some of those other guys. But I think Brownlee has got to, in a way, almost secure his spot here. He's put together overall now, after a slow start, he's put together a really good training camp. And he had a touchdown yesterday. Looked really good. I mean, Jason Brownlee, in a way, owns Washington. Because if you remember, his only touchdown last year came against Washington in the Christmas Eve game where Breece Hall went off and the Jets won barely. And then this year, he scores a touchdown against Washington. So Jason Brownlee has their number, but good day for him overall. In all seriousness, this is a guy that's making a pretty good imprint so far this summer after what was a slow start. Izzy Abanaconda also scored, and it was impressive because late in the game, primarily all backups up front, and he was able to squeeze in after the beautiful, beautiful play by Adrian Martinez downfield. Izzy Abanaconda was able to punch it in in the red zone inside the 5. I think it was about 3-4 yards. So he scored a touchdown. So that was good for his stock. Valladay didn't do a whole lot. He only had 8 carries for 11 yards. And really wasn't much of a factor as a receiving as well. So I thought overall yesterday for that 4th running back competition, it definitely goes to Izzy yesterday with the touchdown. Even though it was short, still a touchdown. Valladay didn't do a whole lot otherwise. So that was primarily the Jets offense. Now you move over to the defensive side of the football, and I think there was a lot of positives here. I have to start with 2 players, though, in particular that I thought really, really impressed yesterday. And I'll start with, we'll start with the corner and Jarek Bernard-Converse because he popped up first here in my notes. I wrote him down first. So we'll start with JBC. JBC I thought was excellent yesterday. 4 tackles, 1 pass defended, and I thought he was great. I thought the coverage looked really good. I thought his tackling, especially open field, looked really good. He clogged up a couple lanes, was taking good angles. I thought he looked really smooth from a tackling perspective, and in a coverage perspective, I thought he was really, really smooth. And I know some people are going to say, oh, well, what happened early in the game against Jaden Daniels and where he threw the ball up to Diami Brown downfield and all that stuff. That was perfect coverage by JBC. It was very good coverage. You just got to give your hats off. It's the number 2 overall pick in Jaden Daniels making a really good throw to Diami Brown. That's all that was. It wasn't JBC didn't get burned. You know, it wasn't like he mossed them. It was a perfect throw. That ball could not have gone anywhere else. And you got to give your hats off to Jaden Daniels. Overall, I mean, just for a second, I thought Jaden Daniels looked really, really solid yesterday. 2 of 3, 45 yards. That was it. And he obviously had the rushing touchdown. I thought he showed you a lot of really good things. But from a defense, from a JBC perspective, perfect coverage. Perfect coverage. Can't do anything about it. Sometimes you just got to tip your cap. It was a great throw and a very nice catch. And that's all. It's the number 2 overall pick showing why he was drafted. That's all that was. But you got to give credit to JBC. Didn't get discouraged, bounced back, put together a really, really good performance. And this is a guy that has really taken over here in camp. Switched from safety to corner, barely played last year, of course, dealt with injury, only appeared in 8 games, only had 2 total tackles, switched to corner, and now here he is really making an impact. His coverage ability's been impressive. Tackling's been impressive. Training camp's been impressive, was impressive yesterday in the game, which is what matters even more. I've been really, really happy with what I've seen out of Jarek Bernard-Converse. And Quantez Stiggers as well, I thought had a pretty nice day yesterday. He had 1 tackle for loss, 5 total tackles. I thought he looked good. And these are 2 guys that not so much this year, but even next year could play a bigger role. And look, I think JBC Stiggers, those could be depth guys, of course. But you even look at next year. Assuming maybe you get rid of, let's say DJ Reed walks, you're going to need one of these guys to step up. And Brandon Echols hasn't shown you a ton this camp. I know he hasn't been, I know he dealt with some stuff in the offseason and there was some, I think, off the field things, but I think JBC and Stiggers have shown you more. You still have Echols as well, but this is a cornerback room that not only set up good this year, but also future-wise, because you're going to have to replace one of these guys next year. It's in my eyes, it's probably going to be DJ Reed that walks. So you're going to have JBC, Stiggers, one of these guys step up. And they're showing you a lot of really good things that if they keep improving, they could potentially get thrusted into a starting role next year. I think you've got to be really, really thrilled with the way that this depth at cornerback room is shaking out. It's really, really impressive. JBC on the top of that list. Another guy that really stood out to me, UDFA out of Miami, Leonard Taylor. And the fact that this guy was a UDFA is surprising to begin with. After what he did in 2022 where he had 3 sacks, 13 or 11, so 24 total tackles, looked really, really good, really, really solid from a run stopping perspective, showed you some positive things too as well from a defensive perspective or a pass rushing perspective. After a really strong 2022 campaign, this was a guy that looked like he could be a day 1, day 2 pick. He went undrafted after a little bit of a bumpier year last year. But this is a guy that could have been a first-round pick that the New York Jets got. Not a first, maybe not so much a first-round pick, but more day 1, even day 2 pick that the Jets could have got, or that the Jets got essentially for nothing. They got him as a UDFA, and he's been very good in training camp. And yesterday he was really, really good. 2 total tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. He had a quarterback hit. I was really impressed with what I saw at Leonard Taylor yesterday, and I talked about it on my preview on Friday. You look at the defensive line depth for the New York Jets, and you have some questions. You have your 8. You have your starting 4. I'll name them. You have Jermaine Johnson, Kinlaw, Quinn Williams, Reddick once he comes. Then you have McDonald, Fotu, Solomon Thomas, Michael Clemens. Those 8 are locked. They're locked in. Then after that, you get to if you hold 10, they're going to hold 10 most likely. That's what they do. You're going to have a couple guys fighting for those final 2 spots. You've got Tack McKinley, Braden McGregor, Leonard Taylor, Tanzel Smart, even Bruce Hector, another guy who I actually think had a nice day yesterday as well. Yes, had a tackle for loss yesterday as well, if I remember correctly. So Bruce Hector, Jalen Holmes, who I really like. I think he's put together a really nice camp. Eric Watts, another UDFA. We've already mentioned McGregor, another UDFA. So a lot of these guys, a couple UDFAs, they're all fighting for those final 2 spots. I think Leonard Taylor right now has got the inside track. Hypothetically, let's say Leonard Taylor makes the team as interior depth, and then you'd be looking at then it would be up to one of Holmes, Watts, McGregor, Smart, Hector, McKinley to take that final spot. But yesterday was a huge day for Leonard Taylor. For all these guys, it's one thing to show up in camp. It's another thing to show up in a game. And, Leonard Taylor wrecked the game. He took over there for a little bit. So really, really strong day for him. A couple other guys. Eric Watts also had a tackle for loss. Tanzel Smart had a tackle for loss. Mentioned Stiggers already. Bruce Hector had a TFL. Sammy Guavon had a tackle for loss. I thought Zaire Barnes and Chaz Surratt both looked pretty good yesterday. Surratt 7 tackles and Barnes had 4 tackles. So I thought those were really positives from those guys. Couple other things. We mentioned McKinley had a quarterback hit. McGregor had a quarterback hit. So those 2 guys also were able to get after it a little bit. And Clemens also had a quarterback hit. One guy I want to talk about is Will McDonald. I know there's some fans that are looking at Will McDonald and say, we didn't have a tackle, we had a penalty. You had to watch the game to really see Will McDonald yesterday. I thought he looked good. I know when you look at the stat sheet, when you look at the box score, he didn't pop up. He had the penalty, he had the roughing the passer. I think that was a little weak, but I'm done at this point arguing roughing the passers calls because that's just the way the NFL is now. It's gotten so soft that if you blow on the quarterback, it's a roughing the passer. So, and the Jets don't get any roughing the passers, which is completely pathetic. That should change this year with Rodgers, but it shouldn't matter who the quarterback is. It's unfair the way the refs call him. Either way, I'm not going to argue about it. It's preseason, but I didn't think it was roughing the passer. Either way, it was a really nice spin move by Will McDonald. Completely blew by the tackle, used his pure athleticism and his speed to get around him. I thought it was a really positive sign. I think Will McDonald has put together, the last week has been really good for him, was excellent at the joint practices. I think he's put together some good camp days prior to that. And I thought yesterday, even though it was rough in the passer, I thought it was a really good rep by him. And I disagree that's a rough in the passer, but again, what do I, I'm done arguing what is a rough in the passer, what isn't, because it's just a stupid penalty that is just gotten completely ridiculous with how soft it's become. Either way, you get the point I'm trying to make here. I thought Will McDonald was solid. In that rep, you get another joint practice opportunity this week against Carolina. You get another joint practice next week against the Giants. You get 2 more preseason games. So Will McDonald here has got a good 2 weeks in front of him to really prove to buy this fan base into him. Because, again, there's a lot of fans that are skeptical, myself included. I still would like to see a little bit more. But if he continues to produce over the next 2 weeks and show off that athleticism, I think you've got to be feeling really good about this team's chances going in. You know, if Hassan Reddick reports, there's a chance you roll out week 1 against the Niners, a starting defensive line that looks something like Quinnen, and this isn't in any order, obviously, because Quinnen's not the edge, but Quinnen, Reddick, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, where you get your 4 best pass rushers out there. We know McDonald's not a 3-down guy. We know he's not great against the run, but his pass rushing abilities really, really started to shine. And we saw that last year, if we're being honest. It's the other stuff that you have some of your concerns with. But those are my overall takeaways from what was overall a very positive day. It was a win. The Jets are 2-0 in 2024. If you remember, beat the Patriots in 2024. You beat the Commanders, so 2-0, undefeated. And now we wait for another action-packed week full of camp, and then, of course, joint practice as well against Carolina. And in another game, another preseason matchup, this time on the road against the Panthers on Saturday night. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. We will be back later on, or we'll be back tomorrow with 2 episodes. We'll have an episode in the morning. Our player preview episode number 10 will be tomorrow. We'll also have training camp recap after tomorrow's practice as well. So we're back to the daily grind episodes after each single practice, joint practice, all that good stuff. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. As always, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Jets, 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 Jets.